Ina uchungu zaidi, watoto wanakwenda kwa shule na kuna walimu.
Kia Teacher Service Commission hawezi kurudisha wale walimu ambao wametupokonya. Sisi tuko wakati tutaandika walimu.
Hakuna usawa, hakuna building bridges kama watoto wetu wako nyumbani na ni watoto wako. Shida mlionayo imesababishwa na tume ya kuajiri walimu.
Nimeongea na Uhuru kabla sijakuja hapa. Narudi kuongea na yeye tena. Wiki ijayo mtasikia matangazo.
Mambo ya security na hasa Shabab imetumiza sana.
Wale vijana ambao wamepata C-, B+, wachukuliwe wapelekwe katika teacher training college.
Resources must be devolved to the counties to the twin of 45% and above. Kama unataka kujua ukweli ya BBI, uone kijana yetu hapa huku ya tani.
The main reason we are supporting BBI is because the BBI is going to strengthen devolution katika Kenya mzima.
All right, so clearly the challenge in Garissa, in as much as there is the setting of the BBI, there is a big challenge with to do with education. But one wonders, because these problems have always been there. We have the county leadership, both Mandera, from Mandera to Wajir to Garissa, even Narok and every other region of this country. How do you fashion the BBI to be the magic bullet that will resolve all the issues that we have? Why are we not exploring other opportunities that we can resolve issues that have always been there?
First of all, allow me to say that Ruto will not stop reggae. You know, I saw that clip there. Ruto will not stop reggae. God will stop reggae. Because reggae is Rastafarians. The worship of Haile Selassie. That is worshipping of idols. We cannot,
but
as a country.
Really, I don't
God
think
will stop
he speaks literally about reggae music. But let's focus on the issue of the Northeastern.
Yeah, but before we go to the Northeastern, you know, you had asked the issue of that inclusivity in the 5 position up there. I have said very clearly that the president, if he is a man, the deputy president will be a woman, and then the executive prime minister will be a person with disability. The deputy prime minister, one will be a youth. The other one will be somebody from the marginalized community.
You believe BBI
now you know. BBI
so
will,
come
now
June, July, when Kenya
qualified.
goes for a referendum and there's not a person of disability in that 5 positions, what will you say? If there's no woman, if there's no person with disability, if there's no young person?
You know, if you make it to be the law, then they must be there. Right. Because the country have person with disability, the country have women. We cannot lack a woman. You know, it's just simple by saying that the affirmative action group should be included in the top leadership of this country. And it become the law. And you know now who will not qualify to be the prime minister. Now, to Garissa. you know what has been happening in Garissa is really pathetic. Because northern Kenya, actually the pastoralist region, is 80% of the landmass of Kenya. And marginalization started in 1965 through session paper number 10, when we placed all our resources in what we used to presume as high potential areas. That is 20% of agricultural land in Kenya. That is where we place all our resources. And that is why the oil that has been in Turkana for a long time, because it was there when the world was created, we were not able to discover because it was considered low potential area. The wind power that is in Loyangalani was not be able to be discovered because we consider them low potential. The pastoralist, that is livestock rearing, is not high potential according to Kenya. So that is when the marginalization starts. So I think if BBI was genuine enough, then we will now try to bring equitable sharing of resources so that we will open up the 80% landmass of occupied by pastoralists, so that we can jumpstart the economy of this country. Because if there were not that session paper number 10 of 1965, our tourism will have been considered high potential. And we'll be having tarmac roads and development and in those regions that have tourism.
Right.
But they were not considered. So that is, I believe it should be addressed.
Honorable Oluoch, let's talk about Garissa now.
Yes.
What land is to Narok and Mombasa insecurity is to the northern part of this country, be it Garissa, Mandera, Turkana, etc., but with specific attention to Garissa. We've seen how education has taken front and center stage because of the insecurity there. How do you, or rather, how will BBI solve that? Given that the core issues here, we take teachers from other regions of the country, take them to Garissa as teachers. But like what we saw, the latest incident where we lost 3 Kenyans to an insecurity invasion in Garissa that were not non-local teachers. How do we solve that? Because at the end of the day, those children in Garissa still deserve to go to school, but there's the security of teachers on this other end.
Let me say them broadly, then I narrow down to the 2 issues of security and education.
Sure.
A question that your colleague brought up, that BBI has, I think, a multi-pronged approach to things. It may not be the silver bullet as such, but remember that there are things that we think may go to the Constitution in terms of, do we amend the Constitution? There are things, like my colleague has said, there's a question of implementation. So do we need to relook the policy issues? Do we need to look where are the missing link? Those are issues. There are some that may require some statutory provision so that as Parliament, we sit down and put in place. BBI will segment and put this all into perspective. Now, on the issue of security, let me begin by saying, where I left with the issue of Narok, that every region will have its unique issues. In Northeastern, it is security. But first, we have to balance this with rights also under the Constitution. Teachers are humans. They have human rights. And remember, under the Constitution, you have a right to security of persons. Nobody is going to go to a place where they're going to be attacked, killed, or maimed by Al-Shabaab in the name of providing education to other people. They must first look at their own security, and the government needs to solve security, the security issue. There is also the right to life and all these things. This is something systematically that people who go to offer their services there have not been able to find in terms of answers. How the BBI solves that is a question that is still very gray in my mind. But let me pick from where my party leader Raila spoke yesterday about. Among other things that we should explore is to be able to open up infrastructure, perhaps have an affirmative action or a policy where we put a lot of our resources on in terms of roads and infrastructure. Because of the vast sort of area, and maybe not too many roads that are tarmac and motorized, it's very, very difficult for police to be able to run and supervise because of the infrastructure. Maybe that's one of the issues that BBI, not in terms of a constitutional amendment, but in terms of policy. We are sitting now to consider the budget for this year. We could perhaps say that if infrastructure is one of the ways in which we could open up Northeastern more in terms of the interior, let's look at that. The second issue, is there a policy issue that we need to deal with in terms of our porous border? Remember something that Trump said he was going to do, and which made him very unpopular with some people, but very popular with people who are pro-anti-immigration laws, that he was going to put a wall, and he actually was going to overrule the Congress on the issue as to whether they should appropriate money to put a wall.
Kenya had proposed the same thing.
Maybe we should talk about our porous wall. Let's put a wall between us and anybody that brings in Al-Shabaab, and then we remain with the ones that are inside, and that way we would be able to reduce this issue. It's a proposal. These are issues that are on the table.
I wanted to take away from you because we need to transition to another topic. But before I do that, so Senator, before you, Senator, so there's that challenge in the Northeastern, and I had someone who was this. They were talking about the biggest problem. This was Senator Wetangula at the Senate. I believe it was on Thursday or thereabout last week, and he was saying that the challenge in the Northeastern is not about whether you want to have schools or not. The biggest challenge is security. How do we resolve that without piling problems for so long? I mean, the first attack against teachers was back in 2014 December, when there was a bus attack, and then there are several instances of attacks, even verbal, by locals against the teachers. How do you resolve all this without having to wait for political promise that BBI is?
The challenges of the northern Kenya they go way back in history, because remember there was an emergency that was imposed in that region. Remember I think it was during Moi's time that the emergency was lifted. Then you have the situation in neighboring countries. You have Somalia, where the locusts are currently breeding and flying into Kenya. Then you have the instability around. So it requires a bigger perspective, and probably even the BBI chapter on safety and security that has tried to dissect issues of terrorism, issues of radicalization of our youth, and how we can improve our security arrangements, probably that would be useful. But I wanted to just bring to the fore a proposal that is in the BBI report, that for health workers, let's set up a health service commission. It's a fairly popular move, but it is going to be affected in a similar manner. You see, TSC is a centralized recruitment agency and management agency for teachers. When we decided that health workers should be employed by counties, the perception was in certain parts of this country, like Turkana, no doctor wanted to be posted to Turkana. And if you're going to centralize healthcare provision, then you're going to have the same problem with healthcare workers in northern Kenya, because no doctor will want to be posted to northern Kenya. In fact, it will be taken as a punishment. So we need to look at this, the centralization. If counties were responsible, if counties made responsible use of the powers given to them and treated healthcare workers well, the debate now would have been to devolve TSC. Unfortunately, our governors have disappointed us, and so we are left with this centralized behemoth, this centralized monster that we call TSC.